Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to really get into a specific piece of information, breaking it down just for you.
That's right.
And today we're looking at an electric skateboard, the MAXFIND FF AT.
Yep. We've got a review from the Skates Electricos podcast guys on YouTube. Good stuff.
Exactly. And our mission really is to understand this board, what makes it tick, what are the key features, the pros, the cons.
And why it's built the way it is. It's about getting inside the design choices, seeing if they make sense for someone like you thinking about this kind of specific setup.
Okay, let's get into it. First off, it was a collaboration, right? Oscar from Cosa de Patinetes actually lent them the board for the review.
Yeah, which is cool. Always good to see that kind of sharing in the community. And we should mention, check out Oscar's channel, too, if you want another perspective.
Definitely. So what first caught their eye?
Well, it was the core concept, really. An all-terrain board, the AT, but running on hub motors.
Which is unusual, wouldn't you say? Usually AT means belts for that extra grunt.
Exactly. So they were immediately curious, like, how's this going to perform? Hub motors on rougher stuff. It's not the standard approach.
And beyond just the motor type, they seemed interested in some other aspects too, things that felt a bit future-proof.
Yeah, like the motor being basically maintenance-free. That's a big draw.
Who doesn't want that?
Right. And the interchangeable battery system. That was a big one for them. The convenience factor.
Oh, for sure. Swapping batteries instead of plugging in the whole board. That sounds pretty appealing.
It really does. Cuts down on hassle, reduces that range anxiety some people get. They also mentioned the wheels, 6-inch solid ones, again, pointing towards maybe lower maintenance.
Okay, so they've got this interesting board, maybe a bit unconventional. They actually ride it. What about the power? You need power for AT.
Well, it's running around 40 volts, which isn't, the absolute peak you see these days.
Right.
But they were genuinely impressed with the acceleration. Said it had really strong torque thanks to having those dual motors. Good punch off the line.
And they immediately tied that back to the listener, didn't they? Thinking about how you might use it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, is it going to get you up that hill in your commute? Can you pull away quickly at the lights? That kind of practical stuff.
Which leads to a point they kept making. This board is particular. It's specific.
Very much so. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of e-skate.
Yeah.
It seems designed for a rider who wants certain things and maybe doesn't care as much about others.
And they had that great example from their Telegram group, right? Rodri.
Oh, yeah, Rodri. He was apparently specifically looking for an all-terrain board with hub motors because he actively wanted to avoid belts.
See, that's a niche, but clearly it exists. People have these specific needs.
It really highlights who MAXFIND might be aiming for here. And the reviewers basically said, you need to think about your scenario. What do you need it for? What terrain? What distance? What's your priority?
It's a good question because maybe hub motors, which some people associate with, like cheaper boards, maybe they make perfect sense here.
Right. We've talked about that perception before. But here, in this specific context, they saw real advantages.
Like parts availability.
Exactly. Hub motors are everywhere in e-scooters. So if you need a replacement wheel and motor unit down the line, it might actually be easier or cheaper to find one compared to some specialized belt drive parts. That's a practical plus.
Okay, let's talk wheels again. Solid tires, not air-filled, like on scooters.
Yeah, front and back. And they felt it made more sense on these bigger 6-inch wheels compared to, say, smaller scooter wheels. Less harsh.
How was the braking, though? Hubs can sometimes be a bit soft.
That's the common concern, yeah. But they reported the braking on the MAXFIND was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Strong regenerative braking, especially in the higher modes.
Regenerative, so the motor helps slow you down and puts a tiny bit of juice back in the battery?
Precisely. They even felt the braking was stronger than some direct drive boards they'd tried, which was surprising.
Wow, okay. But solid tires. There's always a trade-off, isn't there, compared to pneumatic?
For sure. You don't get that same plush feeling, that cushioning over bumps, and maybe the absolute grip limit when braking hard isn't quite as high as with air tires. But the big upside, no punctures. Yeah. Ever. That's huge for peace of mind. They tested it on all sorts, asphalt, bike paths, even dropped off curbs, went on grass, packed dirt.
And it handled okay.
Yeah, seemed to handle it all reasonably well.
Yeah.
Decent performance across the board, they said.
And they mentioned why someone might want to avoid air tires besides just punctures.
Right, consistency.
Yeah.
Air pressure matters. If your tires are a bit low, your range can drop, your power feels different. Solid tires are just consistent, predictable performance.
But there must be downsides to solids, too. Did they mention any potential issues?
Well, based on general experience, especially with scooters, they flagged that grip might be lower on really slick surfaces. Think wet cobblestones, that kind of thing.
Okay, so something to be aware of, but maybe not a deal breaker depending on where you ride.
Yeah, they framed it more as an expected characteristic of solid tires, not necessarily a specific flaw of this board.
So overall, the motor and wheel combo sounds like a deliberate compromise. Puncture-proof reliability meets decent all-around performance.
That seems to be the takeaway, yeah. A well-considered package for its intended purpose.
Cool. What about the ESC, the brains of the operation?
Good impressions there, too. They highlighted the smooth acceleration. No sudden jerks or anything unpredictable, just smooth power delivery.
Which is what you want. Makes it feel more controlled, safer.
Definitely.
No?
And they noted it's a hobby wing controller, which is a well-known, generally reliable brand in the e-skate world.
Did it have different modes?
Yep, 4 riding modes.
Huh.
The top mode apparently gets you up to around 46 kilometers per hour, so what's that, about 28 miles per hour? Pretty quick.
Okay, let's shift to the hardware. Trucks and deck. They mentioned CNC forged trucks.
They did, but they also added a little note of uncertainty. So they looked more like maybe high-quality molded parts rather than truly forged metal.
Huh. But they felt solid.
Oh, yeah. They emphasized they still seemed plenty sturdy and reliable. No concerns about strength.
And it uses double kingpin trucks. Can you unpack that for listeners? What does that mean for the ride?
So double kingpins, or DKPs, basically allow the truck to pivot more, giving you much tighter turning. Great for carving, dodging pedestrians, navigating tight city streets or bike lanes.
But the downside.
They can feel less stable at high speeds, especially if you're not used to them. A bit twitchy, maybe.
Makes sense. More turn means less straight line stability.
Exactly. The reviewers actually suggested swapping the stock cone bushings for barrel bushings if you wanted more stability. That's a pretty easy mod.
So it's adaptable. Did the reviewers agree on the feel?
Not entirely, which shows it's subjective. One found them great for low-speed stuff, but less confidence-inspiring bombing hills or hitting unexpected bumps. But apparently Oscar, the guy who lent them the board, loves DKPs.
So personal preference then, and something you can tweak.
Pretty much. It's a feature, not necessarily a flaw. Depends on your style. Now the deck, that was also interesting. It's composite.
Plastic.
Plastic. How did that feel? Did they say cheap? Not exactly cheap, but definitely plasticky. Different from wood. Not necessarily bad, just distinct.
And no grip tape.
Nope. It has this textured rubber surface integrated into the deck. They said it actually provided pretty decent grip.
What about the shape? Concave?
Mostly flat, actually. Just a slight curve up at the ends. Not really concave in the traditional sense. Oh, and a practical touch. An integrated carry handle. That's always handy. Saves grabbing dirty trucks.
Right. Definitely makes carrying it less awkward.
Now, deck flex is a big thing for some riders.
Mm-hmm.
How did this plastic deck fare?
It has some flex, they said, but it doesn't absorb vibrations like, say, a nice bouncy bamboo deck. Think more rigid structure.
Because it's molded plastic designed to hold the battery and ESC inside.
Exactly. It's engineered for integration and durability. So the parts where the components are housed are even stiffer. It's not that uniform flex you get from wood or bamboo.
It's another potentially polarizing feature. Functional, unique, but maybe not the feel a traditionalist skater is looking for.
Could be. But let's talk about that battery system again, because that sounded like a real highlight.
Oh yeah, the interchangeable battery. They made it sound super easy, like flip a latch, lift the lid, unplug one connector, swap, plug back in, close lid. Done.
That's simple.
Barely so. Really quick and straightforward.
And the range on one battery.
They estimate around 20 kilometers, maybe 12 miles or so. The battery is about 8 amp hours, they figured.
That swappable feature really leans into that convenience, that future-proof idea again, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Forget carrying chargers. Just have a spare battery at work or maybe at a friend's place if you visit often. It really opens up possibilities.
Any downsides to that top-mounted battery compartment?
Just one potential concern they raised: water ingress. Because it opens from the top, you'd want to be careful riding in heavy rain or through deep puddles. Just something to keep in mind.
Right. So bringing it all together, it really sounds like this MAXFIND FF AT is laser-focused on a certain type of user.
Totally. They kept coming back to that. If your absolute priorities are, number 1, no punctures, and number 2, easy battery swapping. Yeah. This could be your board.
But if you crave that wood deck feel or maybe a different kind of ride dynamic.
But maybe look elsewhere. It's for that specific rider profile, like Rodri, wanting AT without belts.
They even floated the idea of it being a good e-scooter replacement, didn't they?
Yeah, for commuting. Maybe more comfortable than a scooter standing platform, potentially more powerful, and crucially, maybe less fiddly maintenance than some scooters.
And that self-service angle too, being able to just swap the battery yourself seems really user-friendly. Less reliance on sending it off for repairs.
That's a definite plus in the long run.
Okay, quick stats check. Size and weight. How portable is it really?
It's about 96 centimeters long, so fairly standard skateboard length. Width is around 26 centimeters.
It's a bit high because of the DKPs.
Yes, slightly higher ride height.
Yeah.
And weight-wise, around 12.5 to 13 kilos, so maybe 28 pounds.
Not super light, but manageable.
They seem to think so, especially with that handle. And the hub motors make it less awkward to carry than some belt drives where the motors hang down. They were actually pretty positive about how usable it felt in the city, especially on bike paths.
And the million-dollar question, or maybe the €880 question, price.
Yeah, around $880 or $880, but they mentioned that was a discounted price, so maybe the regular price is higher.
How did they frame the value? Good deal. Expensive.
Kind of depended on your perspective. Maybe a bit pricey if you just look at the battery size.
8A. But if you factor in the motors, the solid tires, and especially that swappable battery feature,
then maybe it starts to look more reasonable. It's paying for that specific feature set and convenience.
did they compare it to anything else directly?
Briefly mentioned the Tiny Explorer Pro hub, another AT hub board, but pricier, with a bamboo deck and a bigger battery, just as a point of reference.
So the value really hinges on whether those specific MAXFIND features are what you want.
Exactly. That was their bottom line, really.
So final thoughts from the review. Sum it up for us.
It all comes down to your scenario. If you read the featureless, swappable battery, puncture-proof solid tires, hub motors, composite deck, and think, yes, that's exactly what I need, then this board could be fantastic for you.
But if you're thinking, I really prefer a wood deck, or I want the plushest ride possible, or I like the feel of belts,
Then it's probably not the right fit. It knows what it is and who it's for.
sounds fair. And they wished Rodri well with his purchase.
Yeah, nice touch. And plug their Telegram group again.
Yeah.
Good community over there for chatting about all things e-skate.
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive today, the MAXFIND FF AT. It's definitely a unique board. It's carved out its own niche with that focus on hub motors, solid tires, and especially the swappable battery.
It offers a different proposition compared to a lot of other boards out there. It's less about traditional skate feel, maybe, and more about practicality, low maintenance, and convenience for a certain kind of use.
So the question we leave you with is, do those particular features align with what you need? Does that puncture-proof, easy swap battery design solve a problem for your riding?
And maybe a final thought to chew on. Could this MAXFIND board, with its focus on making things easier for the user, less maintenance, easy part swapping, be a sign of things to come? Are we going to see more personal electric vehicles beyond just skateboards heading towards this more modular, more user-serviceable, less hassle kind of design? What are the trade-offs we're willing to make for that convenience?